There are many takes on the ancient fable about the frog in the well. Here's mine. The well, of course, is the only thing the little frog knows. It has provided him with a sense of safety and security. Life in the well is as good as it gets. He has no concept of the world beyond his own meager existence. Until one day another frog accidentally falls into the well. The well frog tries to encourage the accidental visitor to stay in his perfect and peaceful place. And the visiting frog thinks to himself, what a nut. The visitor begins to tell the well frog about the world outside, the wonderful world outside, but the well frog refuses to listen and tells him to stop. This cannot be true. It is impossible. And after becoming really perturbed, the well frog finally tells the visiting frog to get out. But of course, bewildered, the visiting frog asked, how? Well, the frog then points to 3 different ledges by which he can escape. And the visiting frog looks really, really puzzled. And knowing what was on his mind, the well frog said, there was another frog that fell in here speaking the same nonsense that you're speaking today. And he escaped out that way. So now leave. And the visiting frog did as he said. But he said, don't you want to be free? And the well frog said, I am free. And that is my story. Because I want to talk about freedom today. I want to explore the concept of this thing called freedom. Freedom, when taken seriously, is a loaded word, multi-layered and multi-dimensional. It can conjure up some very passionate emotions and some very deadly consequences from the fundamental values people choose to ascribe to it. But what is real freedom? Is it a means to an end, or is it an end in and of itself? Is freedom the choices we have, or is freedom the final destination, the final reward? It is important today, seeing that this is February, Black History Month, and knowing the quest for freedom and equality that has been a long struggle, particularly for African Americans, I must talk about it. In fact, this struggle for freedom has been a struggle for all of humanity. For all have been on this journey to some extent or another. And most all people have their ideals of freedom. So I don't want to concentrate just on the African American perspective. All people want to be free from fear, and especially free from the fear of the unknown. Most want freedom of speech, to be able to say what they will. They want freedom of religion. Most people will readily admit that they want to be free from poverty, to have the desire to be free from to have the financial freedom. But these are all means to an end, and not the end itself. Author and graduate student of DePaul's University College of Multicultural Communication, Covey Biacola says, in these contexts, freedom does not exist as the objective. It exists because there is another objective to obtain, and freedom is the means to obtain it. You see, one objective might be drinking margaritas on a long sandy beach with the one you love. Living in a world free of violence might be another. Some believe that is having their marriage recognized in the state in which they live. And I send a shout out to the recent federal ruling this past Friday recognizing the marriages of all same-sex couples in all states. What a wonderful thing. But after reading the definition of freedom, I realized that it described freedom as the absence of necessity, the absence of coercion or constraint of choice or action. This too describes freedom as a means to an end and not necessarily the end itself. For many African Americans, the journey has been far too long and the road fraught with too many perils. And equality, if not by birthright, then surely it has been earned through the blood, sweat, and tears of our forebears. So as an African American, for me, freedom is about the destination, or has been about the destination. I'm tired, y'all, of traveling. I'm tired of doing this struggle. But when I really thought about how tired I had become, I realized that when I look at my journey individually, then that is what is so tiring. But when I looked at my journey collectively, I took on strength. I'm ready to continue the journey. So although I may be tired, I'm ready to go on because there are others still on the journey. There are new faces and names, new issues, but the struggle is the same. So I ask the question, are any of us really free if some of us are still being held back? And when we think about it, the truth is we're all being enslaved. We're all being held back by the system. Few of us realize that we are but slaves in our pursuit, not slaves in the historical context of the word, but slaves to the societal constructs and the prescribed economic system that exists. Consider what we have been taught about how we should work and play. The premise is to work hard, maintain employment, and seek job security in order to pay bills and to buy the things of which we have been convinced or led to believe that we need. We have been convinced that we deserve to have what we want when we want it. However, someone once said that doing what you want sounds a lot like freedom, but doing what you want does not always have an end that is freeing. So we must be certain of the road on which we travel. Biacola contends, we have become enslaved to our organizational practices and to our careers and, of course, to the almighty dollar. And if you doubt it, just Google search the state of personal debt in this country, where living beyond one's means is a status quo that has not left us free, but rather shackled. Many are led to believe that freedom is having all the money, the affluence, and the power that we can accumulate. And by working hard, we will someday obtain it. But the truth is, only a few ever actually obtain the promise or the dream. We have seen the rich and powerful accumulate more than they will ever need or consume in their lifetime and in the lifetime of their children and their children's children, and yet they still want more. And interestingly enough, they think that more is real freedom. While some may believe that this is the ultimate state of being, I contend that many of these individuals are too enslaved by their own ideals, worldview, and sense of unmitigated power. Biacola states further, beyond our financial enslavement, think of the messages we consume every day. We are told what is beautiful, what is politically popular to ascribe to, and the type of person we ought to want to be. And for our passions, we are told to give in to them because it is supposedly liberating. And this is what freedom looks like. But if we examine the world around us, we might see that things that were meant to give us more freedom have often only brought us pain and obsession, fear, and anguish, which are the antithesis of freedom. Yes, what has meant to set us free actually has held us back. And here's where the deception lies. That we can pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. That we can go it alone. Not that we should take risks with one another and to use our talents and abilities responsibly to create something that makes a difference in the world, that makes a difference to someone else. We all must understand that with great freedom comes great responsibility. Jean-Paul Sartre said, "Man is condemned to be free because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does." In our sense of righteousness, we cherish the belief that everyone and everything deserves to be free. So I have to add a disclaimer that most of us have not taken into consideration whether they can actually handle the responsibility that accompanies freedom. The truth is, most people alone cannot. Most can handle only bits at a time, and some would rather not deal with it at all. People yearn for a predictable, orderly world in which perceived unfairness and inconsistencies are under control. They long to maximize safety and security. And the kicker here is that they don't realize what maximum security really is. So we usually hear about maximum security as it relates to prison. And I know a thing about prison. You see, my father was paroled when I was 11 and was given 3 opportunities to stay out before his parole was revoked. And he used every one of them up rather quickly. My mother said that she believed that he wanted to go back to prison. You see, my father could not handle life outside of prison. He was too institutionalized in his mind that he thought of taking care of a large family was really beyond what he was able to do. And I believe that had there been a supportive and affirming community, one like All Souls here, he would have made it. But he didn't. And in my classes at David L. Moss Correctional Center, I've heard various inmates tell me the same thing of how easy the prison life is compared to the life outside. I realize that there are those who find being told what to do, when to eat, and when to sleep, they may find it freeing. Think about being a felon and not having to worry about how to make ends meet. No pressures from society or your family. See, the system has trained them to believe that this is real freedom. Freedom from responsibility. And so when they're released out into the world without that support, how do they survive? This is what freedom is. This is what freedom looks like. The cell in this case has become the well. And I guess this is also the lure of religion. For some, religion provides that same security of knowing what's next, coming next. The promise of a hereafter, or the promise of deliverance. Because the scariest state for most of them is the unknown. Religion provides meaning and purpose. And now that I know this, I realize that I need to leave people alone when it comes to me sharing all my knowledge. I've learned how to respect other religions and someone's statement of faith, because I realize true freedom is a scary thing, and most cannot handle the idea of allowing their minds to journey beyond their own Bible, or journey beyond their doctrine or their statement of faith. Some truths are just too unfathomable to an unwilling heart. And I realized that freedom is not for the faint of heart, the weak-minded, or the coward, nor is it for the power seekers. This became clear to me as I was sharing with my sister all the great knowledge that I was learning in seminary. As I was sharing, she just said, "Shut up. Just stop. I'm not ready to hear all that." And I thought, oh. And I haven't said a word since then on the subject. When I'm in her presence and she's talking about her God and her understanding of God, I just leave her alone. I wait for her to come seeking to ask questions about why it is that I have the joy that I have, why it is that I believe the way I do, why it is that I can speak to an atheist and we can have something in common, why it is that I can talk to a Christian and can speak the same language too. See, the problem occurs when they think that the only freedom that we all should have is limited to their own understanding of their own well, so to speak. In their well, there is no pressure to find one's own journey or the responsibility of building one's own theology. But rather than getting frustrated, I have just chosen to respect them and to realize that true freedom is not me wasting my time trying to free the well frog when he believes that he's already free. The preacher in me really wants to help them get out of it, but I ask myself again, is it even ethical to free a mind that's not ready? And not to be irreverent, is it not like returning a domestic or tame animal back into the wild? Some might think that that's fine, but research has shown that in such cases they die rather quickly, unable to survive on the outside, not part of the wild community. They die alone. And I don't want to be responsible for someone's loss of faith. So I understand that the well frog, in this manner, he spoke the truth. He had a great sense of freedom in his little well, but it was only in the constraints of his little well and not in his relationship to others and the larger world beyond. And this is key. How does our freedoms relate to others and the world we live in? How does our religion or non-religion relate to others with whom we have to do? Because our lives are not lived in the well. There are those who insist, and I'm among them, that freedom must be enjoyed by individuals, but only in and through the community. Because alone, I expect that few can really handle true freedom. For it is through community that freedom finds its strength. And this is why I embrace this free church tradition. This tradition which encourages our individual journeys through the connection of community, to freely seek out and to discover one's own path, but in relation to others. This is our journey. It is in not just tolerating, but celebrating our differences, gladly welcoming others into the community of all souls, others who do not share our beliefs and our story. Because we realize that the fight cannot be waged alone. And we realize that this is how we will bring change to our state and our nation, by standing together as one community, advocating, demonstrating, and caring for each other and for the least among us. We fight the good fight, willing to travel the road with our brothers and sisters as they struggle for freedom and equality. Isn't this the beloved kingdom that Dr. King spoke of? So I ask, perhaps freedom is indeed the path and not the destination. Because isn't it likely that when one reaches his destination, that he will stop searching for new truths, new opportunities, and new freedoms? Our search cannot end. And while some may believe that freedom is a static state of mind, I believe freedom is a dynamic way of being in community. And every day, every step we take, we're getting better at it. Not closer, but better. Better at sharing our journey, better at understanding our purpose here on earth. Every day becoming more and more freer than the day before. Never allowing our freedoms to be held captive by any religious institution, political party, or well-frog mentality. This is what will keep us together and keep us free.